I think I've started a movement across the entire industry in Canada, in the United States, and across the world, all the way to Australia, and people are trying to implement this model, but I will say that the biggest deterrent is actually government policy. So I was the co-founder of a retirement living development and operations management company. My father was the pioneer of aging in place in Canada since the mid-90s, and he meant to retire in 2005, thinking that our model would be brought forward with the rest of the industry innovating. It didn't really happen on the scale that he hoped for, and therefore we came back to the industry in 2012 when he was, well, 7 years ago, he was 70, and that was when I wanted my father and my mother to be able to enjoy the fruits of their own legacy, to be able to age together. And so I assembled lands at King Edward and Cambie, where our family grew up, to enable my parents to live together, age together. My mom has had Parkinson's since 2008. So that was how it all started, and then I began to create a whole new model that was inspired from heart and personal experience to keep them together. But then I realized actually what my mom would actually still not be happy in just an aging in place retirement community. That aging in place, first of all, means you have independent living, assisted living, licensed care till the end of life, regardless of your health status. If you move in, you're there till the end. But it doesn't actually honor them and allow them to live in dignity with the relationships that they've cultivated all of their lives, which for my mom is our family. And that's how I came up with the intergenerational living concept. And from there, I realized, okay, we are a uniquely very close-knit, united family. We spend every single day together. Not everybody does that. But even beyond our own family, don't we all care about feeling integrated into natural community of natural age mix, having friends which span all the generations, feeling connected to the younger people, having a purpose and contribution and relevance. We don't want to be stigmatized and categorized by age and need, which is very, it makes us feel like we're just old and needy and burdening on society. So the aging in place model is now intergenerational in how I've created it under Element Lifestyle Retirement. And I've had to work through a lot of red tape in the 3 municipalities where we have active projects now. First is Vancouver, City of Vancouver, where we have a zoning bylaw and an age covenant that says an occupant is 55 plus. And I was creative in interpreting that covenant is an occupant, not all occupants, and that's why we have been able to create a model where families can get the professional support and care. The 70s and 80s get that. The adult children, who we have two dependent generations, our children and our parents, who can now, instead of being caregivers, we become family members, enjoying the loving dynamic instead of burdening an obligation and duty. And then the younger children can give the vibrant energy to the elderly and teach each other in children's purity and energy, and then the seniors' wisdom and life experience that actually can't even be offered in a home environment where grandparents might play with the kids, but they might not be having facilitated environments that they can share their life experience and stories and just teach traditional skills. But I say, just kind of bringing back to the civic policy perspective, Vancouver, it took us 7 years. I identified, assembled the land in 2012. It took 3 years to go through a rezoning process, 1 year for the DP, 1 year for the BP, and 2.5 years for the construction. Then we have also a project in Victoria, and that is much more outdated in their policies. The mayor and councillors know that. The staffing, the planning department knows that. They want to enable what I'm trying to do, but they cannot because of what is written into the law. And they have to go through a public process of 3 years. Who else, I don't know, is willing to go through that long and uncertain and expensive process? That's why it doesn't happen. And then in Langley, so Victoria is a 65 plus, everyone but one. That other one, when the dependent and age qualified person moves on to care or passes away, that family member gets kicked out of their community because of this kind of bylaw. Then in Langley, again, they were willing to rejig that age covenant, and it's 55, still much younger than 65. And they actually changed it to kind of more match Vancouver. But again, the rezoning process and me working with them on a very human basis and a one-on-one with each of the people involved at the municipal township level, it's taken 5 years. And we got our third reading rezoning approved for the master plan community and then a DP on the first building, but we haven't been able to start because of infrastructure and all this red tape all over again. But at least I think I've started a movement across the entire industry in Canada, in the United States, and across the world, all the way to Australia, and people are trying to implement this model. But I will say that the biggest deterrent is actually government policy, very well-intended policy, but they were made 65 years ago or something like that, that as much as the politicians and staffing people want to change it, they cannot. And I don't know how we can have more forward-thinking policy that is not about how do we restrict this, how do we prevent this, but how do we enable progress and innovation and collaboration, and not seeing the private people who are a part of the equation, one of the key stakeholders to providing the supply and the innovation. How do we incentivize them with a thoughtful approach to what outcome do we want? What are the intentions here? Instead of a fear-based control that is restricting anything from happening. And I actually just left Element. I left Element on October 1st to take on another very large project that is, I hope to be a global role model of sustainability, social, economic, environmental sustainability. I have another example of where politics kind of got in the way and killed everything for all of the community. We had 12, 13 years ago come up with a plan that would preserve an ecological reserve, 52% of 620 acres for perpetual forest preservation. We would have offered diverse housing, attainable housing, aging in place, a school, community gardens, farming, all of the things that makes a complete community. The mayor had rolled up his sleeves and taken us through a 3-year process of $3 million and worked with us in collaborative workshops of 8 hours at a time over a 3-year period. He wanted it in his gut as a person, in his heart. He wanted it and he believed in it. And in the very last moment, at election time, he told the community that he never supported it. And he killed it, and it was 180-degree turn, despite 60% of the community going up to the mics and saying they wanted it. It was the interest group, his constituents that he was answering to, that made him step out of his own integrity and turn it down, and also his personal situation, his wife giving himself pressure. This is the perfect example of when you're not authentic to your own purpose, you have huge lasting regret. And he still goes around the community now being very quiet, having his head down. When he crosses paths with us, his head is down, he cannot look us in this eye. And he goes around the community saying that that was the biggest regret of his life. I just want to say, politics should not be a divisive thing. It should be a heart-led thing, and we all as human beings want the same basic fundamentals of security, of love, of human connection, and providing for each other. And it is about seeing each other eye to eye in real collaboration and listening to all the stakeholders who all bring different solutions and experiences and intellect. It is not about my interests, your interests. What is my platform? It's working, say, the developers are not big, bad, greedy developers. Economics, I'm sorry, does run the world since many thousands of years ago. And so it's developers are part of the solution, and you do have to be kind of selective in hearing. Are these power, ego, control-driven developers? Or are these community builders who want to make a difference and be part of the solution? So I guess it's just about real listening to each other and understanding.
Thank you very much.